Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Roundup. Well, this is an interesting one. Blizzard have brought in somebody new to manage the entire Diablo franchise. Someone who is sort of known as being a fixer, the kind of guy you send in to get the job done. Activision Blizzard have also just had their Q4 2019 earnings call, and that gives us a glimpse into how things are actually doing there, and they're actually doing quite well. Don't worry though, the Activision Blizzard news barrage should end soon. I get it, it's been a lot. In other news, one half of Rockstar's founder duo is gone, prompting a stock drop. Nvidia have, they've pretty much just casually demolished Stadia, plus a whole bunch more. Now, if you're new here, then hello, I'm Michael. We are an indie game studio. We also do 6 game industry news and analysis videos per week. So if you are down for some of that goodness, then hit that sub button. And if you'd like to help us out with the algorithm, and it really does help, then that like button is also good too. And with that, let's get going. So first up, we've got quite the interesting Blizzard story, one that I honestly did not see coming. So, veteran Gears of War developer Rod Ferguson has left the coalition. Yeah, the guy who was up there on stage at E3, for Gears 5, he's now at Blizzard. Now, what he's going to do there is oversee the entire Diablo franchise. And this is a fairly massive move. Diablo has been totally mishandled by Blizzard. Now, Diablo 3, it half killed itself with its auction house, and once Blizzard fixed all of that with Reaper of Souls, the very clear thinkers in Mike Morhaim's management team decided to axe the second expansion. I mean, that's not Activision Blizzard's fault, that's old Blizz's fault. Then D4 V1, that fell through, only to be rebooted, and then, that turned into what we saw at BlizzCon. And what a strange showing BlizzCon was. I mean, that was an incredible cinematic, one of their best, but the gameplay footage looked very early, especially the animations. So, why is Rod joining? How is he joining? What's going on here? Well, he's had a very storied career in the games industry and quite a reputation. He started off at Microsoft in the 1990s before joining Epic Games in 2005 to work on Gears of War. He then had a brief stint at Irrational Games during the development of BioShock Infinite, where he was supposedly quite useful in actually getting out there, before joining the Coalition in 2015 after Microsoft purchased the rights to Gears of War. Now, rep-wise, yeah, he's essentially known for being a fixer, someone who gets called in to put projects together and to get them over the finish line. His stint at Irrational Games from 2012 to 2013 was specifically to rescue BioShock Infinite from the development abyss that it had somewhat fallen into. He then returned to the Gears of War series in a similar enough fashion, coming in right after the release of Gears of War Judgment, when it was kind of clear that the series needed a bit of refreshing. So that's his history here, and I mean, it's quite indicative. I would say it does raise some suspicions on the state of Diablo 4. I mean, I'd certainly say what we saw at BlizzCon didn't look bad, it just looked really, really, really early, so maybe that's a project that's behind schedule and they feel like a little bit of new leadership, a new direction for the overall Diablo franchise would be a good idea. I think it's also very possible that with him going in to manage the whole franchise, well, maybe they're thinking about D4 Expansion 1, Diablo Immortal, maybe there's going to be more stuff for that IP, and they want, basically somebody new at the wheel to sort of, guide them through all of that. I mean, if we think about Blizzard's core, issues and core goals, well, their main goal is to get more product out there, and one of their issues has just been stuff not working out and being behind schedule. I mean, I think that's the core of it here. It's just about getting new leadership in to help them get more stuff out there. Now, it also, I just should say, it could be that everything is fine with Diablo and this is just a very standard career move, though I think the timing is curious and there is some interesting context because former corporate vice president of Xbox Live and Xbox Game Pass, Mike Ybarra, left Microsoft in October of last year also to join Blizzard as a VP. Now, he no doubt would have been familiar with Ferguson's reputation as a bit of a fixer, so maybe seeing some issues with Diablo 4, maybe just wanting new direction, maybe he lobbied for Rod's joining, maybe he knew that Rod would be a safe bet for getting that game over the finish line. I mean, certainly a fixer is what Blizzard needs in these turbulent times. The botched Warcraft 3 launch, I mean, that's only the latest black mark against them in a series of issues, so yeah, maybe Ybarra is just phoning in a friend here, and maybe that is exactly the help that Blizzard actually need here. Now, of course, a lot of this does perpetuate the sort of very top-down leadership thing, That's very different for different companies and different teams. I mean, an extreme example is Final Fantasy XIV. It was a massive mess, and then a new director in the form of Yoshi P came in. From what I understand, Yoshi P was very much, listen people, this is what we need to do. It's going to be a hard time, very top-down leadership style, and seemingly that's what ended up working out very well for them. But of course, Blizzard will be a different work environment, different work culture, even, geographically and stuff, so it's hard to know exactly what's going to be going on there, but certainly it does prompt some interesting questions about just what is leadership and what is the role, how much of an impact do leaders have, and I suppose only time will tell. Next up though, we do have some very solid stuff. We've got earnings, and they seem to have been extremely strong for Activision Blizzard. I mean, in Q3 2019, they had 316 million MAUs. In Q4, that's 409 million. That is incredible growth, and it seems to be driven by one franchise in particular, Call of Duty. So Call of Duty Mobile and Call of Duty Modern Warfare have done very well, and them alongside World of Warcraft appear to be the key highlights in their business. Now, as for King, the other pillar, I mean, they've remained relatively flat, but with lower revenue year over year. Now, Activision Publishing was the big growth driver here, not Blizzard. Last quarter, they had 36 million MAUs. This quarter, 128 million. And I mean, big surprise where they came from. It was COD Mobile. COD Mobile capitalized on its 40 million user launch to now have 100 million users. So clearly many people played that and many are sticking around. Modern Warfare has also performed very well for them, with units sell-through up double digits from Blops 4, almost 50% of the sales being digital, and live service revenue that is currently outpacing Blops 4, again, I believe by double digits. Of course, Blops 4 did not go like full evil to after Q4 calendar year 2018, so we'll need to see how the months go on to actually, I guess, compared to when Blops 4 went full evil, but it's very clear that Call of Duty is doing excellently for them. Next up, Blizzard have done okay. World of Warcraft has doubled subscribers since the end of Q2 2019. Now, Q2 was a major content release for Modern WoW, Rise of Ashara, but it was before Classic. And what this essentially means here is that in spite of Modern WoW having a very slow Q3 and very slow Q4, WoW's overall subscriptions are double what they were just after patch 8.2 released. So basically Classic. Now, Classic retention is always a big question though, and according to J. Allen Brack, Blizzard president, it is strongest in the East. That's where the most sticky audience is when it comes to that game. And they also mentioned in the earnings call as well the multiple month subscriptions, and that will be important because by the end of this January, the 6-month subscription promo from WoW patch 8.2 will have ran out. 8.3 ran a similar promo this January, so we'll have to see what the comparative performance is like, especially once Modern WoW just gets into the sort of the end period of the Battle for Azeroth expansion. Then, of course, for Classic, Phase 3 hits in February, and that will probably help to retain users, and generally the strengths there have been offset by Diablo and Hearthstone having pretty darn quiet quarters. And then just for Diablo itself, well, Immortal is actually set to enter regional testing in mid-2020. And then as for War 3 Reforged, well, Blizzard President J. Allen Brack did say that customers expect high quality from them, and they've heard that they have not met expectations in that regard. So, I mean, the honesty there, that's a good thing. He said they were committed to supporting the game, but really there was nothing of substance in what he said, bar than to acknowledge the blindly obvious that there's clearly a problem there. Overall, though, it's clear that mobile was the massive driver of monthly active user growth here, and Modern Warfare is a big one for revenue. They actually talked about prioritizing user engagement on mobile before focusing on monetization, and that they actually see a really good opportunity with advertising, and that right now they've been light on ads, but that they have been running experiments that have been promising, so I would guess you'll probably see more adverts in that game as you move into 2020. No doubt, though, they're going to want to repeat that success with Diablo Immortal, and maybe that game has changed direction from BlizzCon 2018. I mean, it's taken such a long time for that game to get out there. I mean, either it was a total mess back then and was in dev hell, or they've really had to make changes, because certainly if it's like any of the other Tencent and NetEase action RPGs, it will be reviled by core audiences. But I suppose, and this is going to be depressing for the audience of my videos and myself, I mean, maybe the large MAU growth of Q4 actually shows that those core audiences don't matter as much anymore. I mean, just look at what COD Mobile was able to do. Okay, moving on. It's apparently a week of big moves because Rockstar's co-founder Dan Houser is set to leave after more than 2 decades at the helm of the company. Now, Dan was a hugely influential figure at Rockstar. He was instrumental in the creation and the success of both GTA and Red Dead, and he was the lead writer for both of those franchises' most recent entries, and both of those recent entries were humongous sellers. Now, the impact here is actually rather clear. Take-Two's share price dipped 6% in a single day following the announcement. Now, it is also the case that much of that did recover afterwards, but it does indicate a bit of lost confidence in the stock. As to how much it matters, to be honest, I think it's kind of like what I said about Yoshi P earlier, right? Leadership can be extremely important in some areas, right? But less important in others. It's kind of hard to know what the impact of this is going to be because I just don't know enough about the internals of Rockstar. Like, I think an extreme example is in the sort of top-down, director-driven Japanese game development where, yeah, swapping leaders out really does seem to have a massive impact, but there's other cases in Western development where, I mean, that's just less of a thing, so we'll just have to wait and see. Now, it's also not clear whether Hauser is retiring or moving on here, but there was some speculation that he was forced out over creative differences with Take-Two management. Now, that somewhat could have been spurred on by the recent rumors that Take-Two really are pressuring Rockstar to just push out more game content there, but right now, to be honest with you, there's nothing we can say there for sure. And the other Hauser brother, Sam Hauser, he is unaffected by this though, and that could somewhat counter a few of those rumors, I guess. I mean, yeah, Dan has been on leave since mid-2019. Could that be for health? Yes. Could it be a holiday? Yes. Could it him, being sunset from the company, being forced out? Yeah, it could be, but we just don't know. Okay, next up, a fun story. So, contrary to what Google's marketing might have had you believe, Stadia is not exactly the be-all, end-all of cloud gaming. Google's platform, along with Microsoft Project xCloud, just are enjoying a bit more of the mainstream limelight than some of their counterparts, especially some of the earlier ones. This could change, though, because Nvidia have finally, after really a remarkably long period of time, opened up GeForce Now. So, GeForce Now is a PC-focused game streaming service, and this means that users can actually incorporate it into their existing setups rather than it being a sort of awkward pseudo replacement such as, with Stadia that kind of just sits on top of what you've already got. Now, the way that Now works is pretty simple. If you own a game and the service supports that game, then yeah, you can just stream that without having to repurchase it. And right now, hundreds of games are actually being supported from its launch, which certainly is a good thing, and new titles are being added regularly enough. Now, basically, this service is shooting for a pretty low barrier to entry. It's got games, they will automatically be, updated and patched to their latest versions and drivers and all of that good stuff that you would expect from the cloud. It also supports Windows and macOS at launch and will be able to be played on a TV via the Nvidia Shield. Now, also does work on mobile devices, and Chromebook support is coming later in this year. So it's a pretty strong launch lineup, and currently there's two plans. So the first plan is a free tier that limits play sessions to 1 hour, and then there's a premium tier for founders that's priced at $4.99 a month for the first year. Now, founders get priority access, whatever that means. Presumably that's like referring to peak traffic times or something like that, and extended session length. Again, whatever that means, an RTX support. So we're going to have to see how those things actually play out. And they can also avail of a 90-day introduction period. So the process seems to be to sign up, get 3 free months, and then $5 a month for that next year. And overall, it's very different to both xCloud and Stadia. Like, Games Pass and xCloud is a great option if you just want a whole bunch of new games to play and you don't have a massive library. But for this, it's really targeted like you're a PC gamer, you've got a massive library, and through this service, you can take that library anywhere. So I actually think it's an interesting one because it's fairly additive. It's more of a middleman than a platform. And yeah, generally, it's just something that seems to be a value add to the games that you already have. So overall, it doesn't seem that disruptive, doesn't seem like they're doing any anti-consumer stuff, doesn't seem like they're locking down exclusives. So overall, yeah, a pretty good situation, actually. We'll just have to see how it pans out in reality. And then for our final bit of news, Fallout 76 is finally hitting Steam with Wastelanders this April, and it seems like they're treating Wastelanders as a kind of relaunch of the game. They've not managed things that well, though, because Atoms and Fallout First subs won't transfer from Bethesda.net to Steam. So, nice one. How do they work that out? I don't know. I mean, look, it's going to be interesting, right? Because if the NPCs and the quests actually feel like a proper Fallout release, it could be quite a good revival to that franchise. And there's certainly, while that game has had so many problems and, hacks and stuff that have came into the news recently, if they can have that really good Fallout experience with Wastelanders and, the other stuff's okay, then yeah, maybe it won't be the largest game ever, but maybe it will be good for that niche audience. I think it's just a case of You know, if it had have launched with these Wastelanders features and less issues, maybe it would have been a good game. There would have been a positive story for Bethesda, but, you know, clearly that's not how it panned out. Anyway, that's it for today's episode. Be sure to, like if you want to help us out with that algorithm. If you want another video to watch, we're going to have a big one going into Microsoft's business model tomorrow because, well, they've said some very interesting things in the last few days. And of course, yesterday is a highlight video for Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition. If you've had War 3 Reforged in your mind and you want to see a positive story along the same lines, check out yesterday's video. I think you'll love it. Anyway, that's it from me. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.